Reverend Katie Day, welcome. Katie Day is a longtime resident of Mount Airy and a faculty member at the Lutheran Theological Seminary. As well as being ordained in the Presbyterian Church, she is also an urban sociologist, and her last book, entitled Faith on the Avenue, published by Oxford University Press in 2014, it represents 7 years of research into all the communities of faith along Germantown Avenue. My special connection with Katie has to do with the birthing suite at Pennsylvania Hospital in the early 1990s, where as a nurse, I had the privilege of being present for some of the time at the birth of both her son and daughter. And remembering this connection, it has been such a pleasure to bump into Katie through the years. We actually only live a block apart. We are neighbors on the street or at the polls. It is a special privilege to welcome you to our pulpit today, Katie. And I neglected to mention that this is not her first time. It was sometime in the 80s or 90s. So she's returning, and we are so glad to have you here.
Thank you. It is an honor to be back here. I have two readings today. One is from the Greek scriptures, which some call the New Testament, but the Greek scriptures which record the early days of Jesus and Jesus' followers. And this is about the arrest of Jesus. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priest and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he went up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword and drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place. For all who take the sword will perish by the sword." The second reading is from a very famous sermon by Martin Luther King Jr. from my much beloved old edition of Strength to Love. It is so old that it costs 75 cents. But it is particularly an honor to read this sermon, which was written from a Georgia jail right after the Montgomery bus boycott. But it's a privilege to read these words from this pulpit from which Dr. King preached. And what year was that? 1960. Okay, great. So this was before then. We must hasten to say that these are not the ultimate reasons why we should love our enemies. An even more basic reason why we are commanded to love is expressed explicitly in Jesus' words, "Love your enemies, that you may be children of your God which is in heaven." We are called to this difficult task in order to realize a unique relationship with God. We are potential sons and daughters of God. Through love, that potentiality becomes actuality. We must love our enemies because only by loving them can we know God and experience the beauty of God's holiness. The relevance of what I have said to the crisis of race relations today should be readily apparent. There will be no permanent solution to the race problem until oppressed people develop the capacity to love their enemies. The darkness of racial injustice will be dispelled only by the light of forgiving love. For more than 3 centuries, American Negroes have been battered by the iron rod of oppression, frustrated by day and bewildered by night by unbearable injustice, and burdened with the ugly weight of discrimination. Forced to live with these shameful conditions, we are tempted to become bitter and to retaliate with a corresponding hate. But if this happens, the new order we seek will be a little more than a duplicate of the old order. We must, in strength and humility, meet hate with love. Of course, this is not practical. Life is a matter of getting even, of hitting back, of dog eat dog. Am I saying that Jesus commands us to love those who hurt and oppress us? Do I sound like some preachers, idealistic and impractical? Maybe in some distant utopia, you say, that idea will work, but not in the hard, cold world in which we live. My friends, we have followed the so-called practical way for too long a time now, and it has led inexorably to deeper confusion and chaos. Time is cluttered with the wreckage of communities that surrendered to hatred and violence. For the salvation of our nation and the salvation of humankind, we must follow another way. This does not mean that we abandon our righteous efforts. With every ounce of our energy, we must continue to rid this nation of the incubus of segregation. But we shall not, in the process, relinquish our privilege and our obligation to love. While abhorring segregation, we shall love the segregationist. This is the only way to create the beloved community. To our most bitter opponents, we say, we will match your capacity to inflict suffering by our capacity to endure suffering. We shall meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we shall continue to love you. We cannot, in all good conscience, obey your unjust laws because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good. Throw us in jail, and we shall still love you. Bomb our homes and threaten our children, and we shall still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators of violence into our community at the midnight hour and beat us and leave us half dead, and we shall still love you. But be ye assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. One day we shall win freedom, but not only for ourselves. We shall so appeal to your heart and conscience that we shall win you in the process, and our victory will be a double victory. May these readings give us new wisdom and understanding.